Hey guys, it's Andrew, the Urban Bayman. I'm back in the studio again. As you can see, it's a rainy old day, and in typical Newfoundland fashion, we work with the weather. There's no sense fighting against it. Don't get me wrong, I have all sorts of weather gear here, and I will go for a hike at some point before this day is out, hopefully after the weather breaks. In the meantime, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity. While I'm in the studio, I've been doing some writing, preparing my documents for a new project we're working on. It's an online tutorial called A equals MC squared. And my initials, which are very convenient because, what do we say? We're energizing the mind. Interesting. But with that aside, I've been doing an awful lot of driving lately. And when you're driving across the island of Newfoundland, your radio coverage isn't the best. So I have been listening to an awful lot of CBC radio. When I leave Corner Brook, listening to 990. As soon as I reach basically the Hampton Junction, I switch over to 540, still CBC. And that'll carry me almost to Clarenville. And then I'll go to St. John's on the 640 station. Needless to say, I've been bombarded with an awful lot of special interest stories, right? And as I'm listening to them, boy, most of them are based on oral history, right? And I don't have a whole lot of faith in oral history. And I went back to my blogs and I found this one that gives a little explanation as to why I find myself questioning so much of what I hear on the radio these days. Among our favorite May excursions is an annual retreat for a class of young film students from Toronto's York College. This is an especially talented group of children who expect a true learning experience while shooting the eastern component of a nationwide documentary that starts in Newfoundland and Labrador. Guides embrace the opportunity, spending an inordinate amount of time preparing for this trip, and the litany of questions the class present in an interview format that is recorded for submission and grading. Thankfully, the school provides content requirements in advance, and together we plan a unique itinerary that best suits their ideals. Last year's focus was on resource development, extraction, depletion, demise, and ultimately the need for change and adaptation. So, of course, we suggested a ferry ride to Bell Island with a stop at the mining museum. For many years, Bell Island boasted the largest iron ore mine in the world, a massive deposit that stretched many miles below the ocean in a well-defined structure that was conveniently located on a tidewater port. The mine operated for almost 100 years, closing in 1967 when technological changes in the smelting industry deemed the ore unusable, leaving nearly 3 billion tons in the ground to this very day. This was a most unexpected turn of events, a major disruptor that resulted in the loss of 2,400 jobs and devastated that community. As you might expect, the mine tour focuses mainly on this downturn, along with the many hardship of a miner's life. The entire tale is one of hardship, impoverishment, and woe, an unfortunate manifestation we tend to create in our oral history, even when undeniable accounts of archaeological evidence suggest the exact opposite. Storytellers are prone to embrace tragedy and all it entails. Thus, upon leaving the mine, we asked the children to think about all the museum exhibits and how they compared to the narrative presented, reminding them that there were obvious discrepancies which required a proper comparable. 10 cents an hour doesn't sound like much money in these days, so you need to ask, how much did a doctor make in those days? Because the photos and artifacts suggest that the people of Bell Island were in fact quite prosperous. Did you happen to notice the name of the cameraman who took all the pictures in the museum? Joseph Karsh was one of the greatest portrait photographers of the 20th century. He took the classic picture of Winston Churchill that's still used on England's £5 notes. He held 15,000 sittings for the world's most rich and famous, including Audrey Hepburn, Nelson Mandela, Fidel Castro, Walt Disney, Muhammad Ali, and Albert Einstein. Iconic images that are still recognizable to this very day. Imagine how much Joseph Karsh would have charged to film your town. Now look at the photos a little closer, because it looks like 10 cents an hour went an awfully long way back then. Undoubtedly, many of the homes in Belle Island are in rough shape today. But when you look at the magnificent architecture and their size, these are finer than most homes that were built in North America during the early 1900s. Did you happen to notice the number of vehicles Karsh photographed while he was in Belle Island? On an island with nowhere to drive. This would have to be considered a sinful luxury that would best be ascribed as conspicuous consumption. There are photos of grown men playing baseball on Belle Island, unheard of anywhere in Newfoundland and Labrador, except maybe the American bases. No one else could afford such recreational time, let alone the equipment to play like they did on Belle Island, where it was as good as the major leagues. Even the farms Karsh photographed in Lands Cove were beautifully terraced and so well kept they remind us of better known agricultural areas in Tuscany or even Napa Valley. No doubt life was hard on Belle Island, but it was challenging for everyone in those days, and many endured far worse. The reality is, Belle Island exhibited an enviable lifestyle and a beautiful community that should be celebrated, not only for posterity, but for future generations who could be encouraged to believe in their self-worth and an ability to build a more hopeful future. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope these lessons, these messages are meaning something to you. I'd ask you to subscribe to our channel, to stay tuned, to leave comments. We love any opportunity to discuss, to debate, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Thanks. Andrew McCarthy, the Urban Bayman.